So, welcome to our final seminar this semester, co-organized by EMER and Bergen Global Challenges. My name is Amani Salim, and I'm the coordinator of EMER. I'm also a PhD candidate at the Department of Sociology. So today we have Raquel Herrero. She's a PhD candidate at the Department of Health Promotion and Development at the Faculty of Psychology here at UIB, University of Bergen. Raquel will present to us her article, which is currently under review and under the title of The More You Go to the Mountains, the Better Parent You Are. Migrant Parents in Norway Navigating Risk Discourses and Professional Advice on Family, Leisure, and Outdoor Play. So Raquel will talk to us for 30 minutes and we'll have 30 minutes left for questions. So all in all, the seminar is 1 hour long. So for those who would like to ask questions, you may use the chat function at the bottom of the screen. Since we have a different setup this time as a meeting, you can also turn your audio on and actually ask your question. But before that, you'll have the function also down at the bottom where you raise your hand. So make sure you raise your hand first and then turn your microphone on in order to ask the question. This is just to have a more sort of an organized sort of platform. So a couple of points in order before I hand it over to you, Raquel. So the thing is, please make or turn off your audio during the presentation so that we make sure there's no outside noise. And in addition to that, since the seminar will be live streamed on YouTube, you will also be filmed. So if you wish not to be filmed or not to actually appear on the screen, also make sure to turn off your camera. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to you, Raquel. You may start now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Amani, for your presentation. And thank you for inviting me to hold this seminar. So now I will share my screen so I can share with you a PowerPoint presentation that I have prepared. Yes, so here it is. So as Amani already said, in this seminar, I will present to you a manuscript. This is the third manuscript part of my PhD, which is titled The More You Go to the Mountains, the Better Parent You Are. Migrant Parents in Norway Navigating Risk Discourses in Professional Advice on Family, Leisure, and Outdoor Play. But before doing so, I would like to briefly introduce myself and also my PhD project. So in order to give you some context to better be able to present this manuscript. So I hold a degree in social work and a BA in social and cultural anthropology, a master in gender studies. And 6 years ago, I was so lucky to get a scholarship to study an Erasmus Mundus Master in social work with families and children. So the master thesis, part of this program, I wrote it in Stavanger about the experiences of mothering among Romanian women in Norway. In 2017, I started my PhD, as Amani already said, at the Department of Health Promotion and Development. And my PhD project explores how Southern European migrant parents experience parenting in Norway. So I'm focused on how Southern European parents make sense of their own parenting in the context of migration, and also how they experience local institutions' interventions in family life. So how they navigate parenting ideals in their encounters with welfare professionals here in Norway. This specific objective, how parents navigate parenting ideals in professional encounters, have been addressed by the manuscript I'm going to present to you today. So I'm a lecturer at the Master in Child Welfare here at UIB at the University of Bergen, and also in the Master in Sexual and Reproductive Health at the University of Concepción in Chile. And during my PhD, I have conducted 2 research stays. The first one, I'm very grateful to Imer actually, because so my first research state was at Radboud University in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, and it was at an Imer's lunch seminar right at the beginning of my PhD, when I met Anouk de Koning. She was, at the time, she was an associate professor at Radboud University, and she came to Imer to present her project, Reproducing Europe. And this project, it was very related to what I wanted to do for my PhD. So I stayed with her team for 3 months. And last year, I took my second research stay at the University of Kent in the UK at the Center for Parenting Cultural Studies that is directed by Professor Ellie Lee, who has been a co-author of the manuscript I'm going to present to you now. I'm now a member of this center, and I saw on the website that there are also some Imer scholars who are members of this research center. I'm currently participating in 2 research projects, Roma Matter, which is an European research project exploring teenage motherhood among Roma girls in different European countries, and in COVID, that focus on how refugee and immigrant groups in Norway have dealt with the coronavirus pandemic. And again, I should say thank you, because many of you, so all of you got the email I sent last week asking for help in order to get some respondents for the survey we are conducting now in COVID. So thank you for helping me with that. So now I would like to briefly introduce my PhD project, since the manuscript I'm going to present is part of this project. Because usually when I present my PhD project, I'm asked why Southern European parents. So therefore, I thought that this deserves a slide in my presentation, right? So Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece, they are very different countries, but there are some authors who have pointed out that they share to some extent political, economic, and migration history. Um, Choosing to focus specifically on parents coming from these countries assume as a starting point that there would be, to some extent, a degree of common social and cultural understandings within this group regarding parenting, childhood, family life, and the role of the state in family life. That is something that I was interested in. So these countries, they were under dictatorship in the last century, and also after the Second World War, they were among the most numerous migrant communities. So we are talking about a migration that was characterized by um, being based on state-to-state agreements. At that time, it was mainly blue-collar men who migrated from these countries to Central, Northern European countries. It was supposed to be temporal migration. So they were expected to return after 5, 10 years working in a factory in Germany or France. So after joining the European countries, these countries experienced a modernization period and a transformation of their institutions and socioeconomic structures. In this way, they developed their welfare state systems, as we know them today, characterized by a less generous social protection system if we compare them to the Northern European welfare states, and also characterized by the strong role of families in social protection. So I assume these are factors that could shape how Southern European parents understand the role of a state in family life. So Southern European welfare state systems are also characterized by the strong role of the informal economy and by underdeveloped state institutions, especially if we compare them to Northern European welfare state systems. Another thing that these countries have in common, and that is very important for my PhD project, is that they were hardly hit by the economic recession in 2008. So they suffered the negative consequences of this economic crisis, and also the effects of the austerity policies that were imposed afterwards. As a result, unemployment rose, and also emigration to Northern Europe. So in Norway, this community, the Southern European community, has grown noticeably since 2008. The Spaniard community is the largest one, followed by the Italian, the Portuguese, and the Greek. In this context of post-economic recession, The Economist, this journal, used the acronym PIGS, so P for Portugal, I, Italy, G, Greece, S, Spain, to refer to these countries. And I think this is another thing they have in common, right? Like that they have experienced a case of stereotyping in the context of public policy. So referring to these countries as pigs is a way of pointing out moral defects like laziness or short-sightedness as a moral explanation for the fact that the economic crisis hit them stronger than other European countries. So my PhD project follows an exploratory and narrative design. I collected data from August to December 2017 in the counties of Hordaland, Rogaland, and Oslo through 2 focus group discussions and in-depth interviews that followed a narrative approach. So I really wanted to get rich data and to get knowledge about the context in which the storytelling was taking place, the context in which my participants framed their experiences. So interviews, I had 12 individual interviews and 2 couple interviews. And also, in addition to that, I participated in some gatherings and events organized by the Spanish and Italian communities, like Christmas dinners or barbecues, Facebook forums. So I saw these as additional windows to migrants' opinions and reflections. It allowed me to have informal conversation with my informants and other Southern European migrants. And as for analysis, so in each of the papers I've written with this data, I have chosen either thematic or narrative analysis depending on what I wanted to explore, what I wanted to look at in that paper. So this is an overview over my informants. So they were 20 Southern European parents. Out of them, only 5 were fathers. Most of them were from Spain. They were from 30 to 45 years old, and they have 1 to 3 children aged from 10 months till 17 years. They had lived in Norway from 3 to 14 years. Most of them, like half of them, had university degree and middle-class jobs. Others, like 5, didn't have a university degree and had a manual occupation. And then there were others who, even though they were highly educated, they didn't success in getting a job in their a qualified job in their professional field. Apart from 1 single mother, informants were either married or cohabiting with a Norwegian or a Southern European partner. So so this is what I was hoping, like to get a multi-voice sample, like a very diverse diversity within my informants that could enlighten the complexity within the research phenomenon, which is parenting in migration. Okay, but now I'm gonna present the manuscript. So I started to write it during my research stay at Kent University. That's why Professor Ellie Lee, she's a co-author because she was kind of my supervisor there. And then Ragnhild Hollekin, she's my supervisor and she's also a co-author. The manuscript has been under review for almost 3 months now in the journal Risk, Health and Society. So the thing is that when I was at Kent University, I went through my data again. I wanted to look at parents' experiences with expert knowledge in Norway. So parents' experiences with welfare professionals in Norway. And I saw that family leisure and outdoor play emerged as key areas of parents' interactions with professionals. So for the purpose of this manuscript, I decided to extract and analyze the data related to this to parents' discussions about this aspect of parental experience, so family leisure and outdoor play. The aim of the manuscript is to explore the experiences of Southern European migrant parents living in Norway in their encounters with community health nurses, so that could be helsesøster, and kindergarten professionals discussing outdoor play and family leisure. So the manuscript aims to explore how migrant parents, whose understandings of risk were initially formed in other cultural contexts, respond to the associated risk discourses in such professional encounters. So this manuscript, as well as my PhD project, is broadly situated in relation to research about the contemporary parenting role and the social construction of parents as risk managers. Much of this research provides insights about the workings of intensive parenting. Intensive parenting is described as the dominant ideology influencing child rearing in Western societies. So this ideology constructs the practice of raising children as child-centered, expert-guided, emotionally absorbing, labor-intensive, and financially expensive. And there is a large body of literature that has connected this intensive parenting ideology to the wider phenomenon of risk consciousness. So showing that according to intensive parenting, responsible parenting is a form of child rearing in which parents are seen as managers of risk. So parents are seen as um, people who should be open to be made aware of and respond of to information about an increasing number of risks impacting their children's development and their children's well-being. So parents are in this context constructed as having a moral and a social responsibility to be risk conscious. The literature also draws the attention to a perspective in professional and policy discourse in which parents are also considered to be inadequate risk managers, so who need support and expert guidance in order to be able to protect their children properly from all those risks to their well-being. So risk constructions of this sort have a moral component that implies that responsible individuals are expected to self-regulate according to expected norms dominated by middle-class stereotypes and communicated through expert knowledge and professional practices. So institutional practices have been criticized for overlooking the structural conditions that parents and families encounter, um, focusing instead on identifying those families, children, parents at risk and targeting professional intervention at them. This has been explored particularly in health promotion and educational practices because these practices are framed by a lifestyle ideal of healthy living. And based on that, they identify families and children at risk based on notions of legitimate risk that are related to lifestyle choices. For instance, having an unhealthy diet or smoking. So attention has been also paid to the concept of double bind of the parent as manager of risk. Double bind is a very important concept that captures how the parental role is constructed around contradictory demands. So on the one hand, parents, they are expected to protect their children from risks of multiple kinds, but on the other hand, they are expected to expose children to risk so they become resilient, right? And I think that what lies behind this contradiction is a construction of childhood around, on the one hand, an emphasis on safety, protection, and on the other, a new emphasis or focus on resilience. So it's like parents, no matter what they do, they will be criticized because if they don't protect their children from all these risks, they will be assessed as neglectful parents. But if they do, and if they overprotect their children, they will be accused of being helicopter overprotective parents. So the manuscript builds on all these insights through its focus on migrant parents and professional practices in Norway. I think that Norway provides a very interesting context for exploring how parents navigate this double bind position because in Norway there is an institutionalized emphasis on the importance of outdoor life and developing resilience. So within intensive parenting, family leisure is constructed as part of the parental role. Parents, they are expected to plan, organize, carry on activities that are safe for children, but also that impart, that teach children some positive values and that promote a healthy lifestyle, so children will become good adults, good parents, and good citizens in the future. And in Norway, this philosophy of friluftsliv, like the philosophy of outdoor lifestyle, has been taken for granted symbol of the Norwegian culture and national identity, which has become an important element for the Norwegian nation building process, drawing a boundary between Norwegians and non-Norwegians. So nature and outdoors are also at the core of constructions of good parenting and good childhood in Norway. In fact, construction of good childhood in Norway are framed by discourses of worry and of the right of the child, containing the notion of a robust child, a child who is independent, a child who is rational, who grows up in a natural, unpolluted environment. And the childhood, the ideal of childhood that is predominant in Norway reflects also some values that are present in outdoor activities and that are emphasized by the Norwegian culture, like agency, participation, self-sufficiency, independence. So, and we see how all these ideals, um, ideals of childhood and also nature and outdoors are present and recognized in Norwegian media discourses, policies, and institutional practices, especially in public health practices like helsesøster and educational practices. So the migrant parents in my study, they stress the difference they experience between Norway and their countries of origin regarding professional advice about parenting and family life. And in particular, they stress the greater focus on contact with nature that they have encountered here in Norway, and their perception to being a country with a particular set of childbearing norms that have explicit moral dimensions when expressed in professional practices. For instance, yeah, as this Spanish mother shared in the focus group discussion, if you are parents who are all day home, the kindergarten professionals will give you a dirty look because the child must be taken outdoors. Luft, so much luft is very important. So we see how migrant parents located the clash they perceive in risk perceptions and construction of childhood in socioeconomic and political contexts. I will discuss this later, but I think that this idea is illustrated in this quote that Linda, Greek mother, shared. So in kindergarten, she meant in Norway, they prepare kids to be part of a social democratic society, whereas in Greece, they prepare them to be in a dog-eat-dog world. You have to be the best, you have to live by yourself and with your family because no one else will do it for you. That's how we raise children in Greece, with classes and context. Whereas here, you are going to be a member of a society that is gonna look after you, and you have to be like everyone else. So children play all day and they learn to share. So informants, they question and resisted professional discourses of risk, and they draw very strong contrast between normative assumptions about what was good for children associated with a home culture like Southern European and those experienced in Norway. A double bind seemed explicit when migrant parents discussed this. So regarding the topic of outdoor risky play and the advice and practices of kindergarten professionals, migrant parents, they contested this professional opinion and advice because they said that because they felt scared their children would get injured or would get sick after getting involved in some activities that involve heights or high speed activities that are considered dangerous in Southern Europe. As for the topic of family leisure, they also contested the approach of professionals regarding family leisure. So I think that this is very well illustrated in this long extract from a focus group discussion. So Linda, a Greek mother, she started the discussion saying, the health sister, so the community health nurse, asked us what we did during the winter holidays. I thought about Norwegian families going to their cabins to ski, and well, it's true that outdoors activities are perfectly suitable to do as a family, whereas the other social activities that we have in Southern Europe, like going to dinner, don't exist. You come home earlier than you would if you lived in Greece, but what can you do? Yeah, because the child has to go to bed at 7. It seems that the more you go to the mountains, the better parent you are. In Norway, being a good parent means to allocate a chunk of your time to your children. We do activities with the kids and we spend money. In Italy, we are more collective. The children are always with us, so we don't need to allocate time to them. Here it has to be planned around the child. In Italy, you don't have to plan. It's more like a natural thing. In Norway, that would never happen because children go to bed at 7:30. And if you bring your children to dinner with you, you are seen as a horrible parent because you drink beer in front of them. You are a horrible person. So you keep them up late. Don't you? Do you know about the sleeping cycle from the Helsesøster? So we can see how this group of mothers describe their countries of origin approach towards family leisure as collective, meaning that the time families spend together is experienced as more natural because parents they don't need to plan in advance which activities they are going to carry on in order to ensure that they were focused on the child. And this was assessed as positive because, of course, it was less demanding for them as parents, and also because it would promote positive outcomes for their children, like the development of social skills, fun memories, or promoting closeness in family. So the parents perceive a clash in professional understandings of proper family leisure between Norway and their countries of origin. And they perceive that this clash involves clear and explicit moral judgments about their parenting. So references to being thought of as a horrible person or horrible parent accompany discussions of professional responses to Southern European norms of later bedtimes for children or consuming alcohol in front of them. So across the data, we see how the migrant parents contested construction of risk like irregular or late bedtimes, and also moderate adult alcohol consumption in front of children. So they disagree with this um, construction of risk, and they disagree with this as a measure of the quality and worth of their parenting. And while they did so, while they contested this, they also justify the decision to include their children in activities that involve those practices by referring to legitimate images of good parents. So for my informant, good parenting was constructed as appropriate modeling, meaning that they should parents should teach children social and cultural norms through one's behavior. For instance, regarding the topic of the moderate adult alcohol consumption in front of children, my informants stress how important it was for them to show children informed patterns of moderate and non-problematic social drinking that would protect them from dangerous drinking patterns that they have observed in Norway. So we see how they contested this expert knowledge in this context, but at the same time, they seem to be very aware of professionals' moral judgments about their role as risk managers based on assessment of their lifestyle choices. So this influence whether they would openly question professional advice or not. So regarding the topic of outdoor play or kindergarten professional practices or outdoor naps, um, my grandparents frequently expressed that they felt they could show their disagreement with professional without being categorized as bad risk managers. And this motivated their attempts to try to meet in the middle, try to find a compromise with professional. But even in the cases when they describe an experience of negotiation, they indicated that they were aware of their marginal position in the whole society. So a position like that it was difficult for them to challenge the dominant views on childhood and parenting. So yeah, as this quote illustrates, this was from Agnesia, an Italian mother. When my daughter started kindergarten, we were shocked about the idea that kids in Norway sleep outside in the pram. I reacted to that. I spoke to the staff. We considered that she could sleep inside, but you try to find a compromise because you don't you can change the Norwegian society and you don't want your child to be that different. So yeah, so like trying to meet in the middle, but also like being aware of, yeah. So incorporating their children into their free time with other adults was a practice that participants clearly associated with, came with a high cost. Therefore, they wouldn't openly contest this practice in professional meetings, and informants shared that their experiences of internally disputing, internally rejecting professional advice, risk discourses, but complying. So pretending that they agree with professional assessment. And this was also motivated by their feelings of um, having their knowledge about childhood and parenting misrecognized by professional, like non-valued, and also their fears of being reported to child welfare services. So, for instance, like this in this quote is from Sonia, a Spanish mother, and she constructed how she would differentially negotiate discussing um, her child using knives in kindergarten and alcohol. For, like you decide to have a discussion on something with a professional depending on the subject and the possible consequences. Because if it is just an opinion, I'm afraid that my child uses a knife in kindergarten, then it's okay. But if the professional is going to do something because we disagree, he doesn't like the way I do things, then depending on how much power the professional has, if there is a process, a mechanism they can initiate against me, usually we understand each other and we find a middle point. But with the alcohol thing, I wouldn't discuss it with them, right? So it was like they express that there are some kinds of expert knowledge that are non-negotiable in Norway, right? The alcohol consumption in front of children was one of them. And these accounts came accompanied by their feelings of misrecognition and also fear of child protection services. Um, yeah, so for instance, like this quote shows that fear of being reported to child protection services. We went to Spain when the child was 3 months. It was our village festivity, and we stayed as long as we wanted. The child was in the pram. We weren't going to the disco, of course not. We sat in a terrace having some drinks with friends. When I came here, the health sister asked me how it was. I, naive of me, said, "Oh, the festival was great." But the child wasn't at the fair, right? And I didn't know what to say. Why has this woman got shocked? Because the child was sleeping in the pram. She started with the sleeping schedules again. So I asked this informant, why did she say that it was naive of her to disclose that information with the health sister? And she said, because maybe she doesn't like it and thinks we are bad parents. Here, alcohol and children present is a terrible thing, and the health sister has power. She can call child protection. So again, like that, the shadow of child protection services. Um, yeah, and the perception that there are some topics regarding family leisure, especially like, yeah, alcohol consumption in front of children that are non-negotiable and that come with a high cost. But still, like we also, of course, we also found that informants share having experienced adaptation to some professional advice, even endorsing their approach. So this experience was discussed, especially in accounts of experiences with outdoor risky play. So we found how, especially after having had positive experiences with the first child, informants were more positive to embrace expert knowledge in this topic, and also how with time they realized that kindergarten professionals, they prioritize the skills that their children would learn from outdoor risky play, like for instance self-sufficiency or independence, over the risks that this practice might pose to their children. Yeah, so as this quote shows, like when my youngest was born, I already knew how kindergartens are. My eldest never got injured or had any problems, so I just accepted my child would be all days outdoors. So when this happened, when they had positive experiences, they would embrace expert knowledge in collaborative relationship. But there were cases in which the process of adaptation was experienced as challenging, more as like an accommodation born from necessity. This was the case of parents that felt that they didn't have any other alternative left for them or for their children, so they just have like to accept professional advice or practices. For instance, yeah, like this father said, like you get used to it, you don't have any alternative. It's difficult, to be honest, it's hard, but I think that once you are inside, you say, I have to give in, I'm already here. So I gave in, I cannot do anything else. Either you take him to kindergarten and you work, or you don't work and stay at home with the child. So this was a father who was referring to outdoor risky play. Yes, getting, yeah. So professional practices and advice about outdoor play and family leisure were mostly experienced by the migrant parents in this study as not open for discussion. So the most dominant feature of parental experience was a perception of moral judgment, of behaviors and lifestyles associated with Southern European cultures. So migrant parents clearly experienced a contradiction between understandings that influence the approach of those working in kindergarten in their countries of origin and in Norway, and they had to find ways of managing this difference. So, however, it was in this aspect of their parental experience, I mean, in kindergarten practices, in the topic of outdoor play, it was where we found most evidence of accommodation and even support for the practices found in Norway, encountered in Norway, based on on the benefits of exposing their children to nature. So we saw in this topic a partial resolution of the double bind. And I think that it's very interesting to see how, in order to make sense of the difference in risk discourses, the migrant parents reflected on how survival is understood in the host and origin countries. So they discussed that in Norway, professionals promote outdoor activities through which children would acquire skills like creativity, teamwork, participation, independence, because these skills are needed in order to thrive in a modern, democratic, and egalitarian society. However, they discussed that the adult-oriented activities that are typical of kindergartens in their countries of origin mirror the set of skills that are thought to ensure children's futures in those countries, skills like discipline and good manners. They also identify a larger clash in construction of childhood and parenting, underpinning risk discourses. So they discuss how childhood in Norway is constructed as a social category separated from adulthood, and how the Norwegian state, through its institutions like kindergarten, is responsible for ensuring children's good childhood, understood as unpolluted by the adult world. So how childhood in Norway is seen as a life stage in which children should be protected from risk from the adult world. And of course, this came as a surprise for them because they experience in their countries of origin that they should facilitate their children's socialization into the adult world, not to protect them from it. Yes, almost there. So parents experience this discourse of risk as powerfully moralized in their encounters with professionals, and they experience that professionals judge their parenting based on how well they protected their children from legitimated risk. And they discuss how professionals typically recognize risk related to their lifestyle choices like alcohol consumption or sedentariness as risk to their children's well-being. So leisure activities that involve irregular bedtimes, late bedtimes for their children, moderate adult alcohol consumption or sedentariness were constructed as sign of irresponsible parenting. And of course, this led to two forms of positions, right? Like good parents are those who manage the legitimated risk to their children upbringing with the help of professionals. Bad parents, irresponsible parents are those who allow the child to stay up late with other adults. And finally, regarding how they responded to these risk discourses and assessments, migrant parents openly contested the professional discourses when they had confidence that they were not going to be positioned as irresponsible parents. So this could be the case, especially of children's outdoor play or outdoor nap. Also, when they felt that their opinion were valued and that professionals um, were open to meet in the middle, they tried to reach a compromise. However, if they felt that professionals misrecognize and devalue their knowledge and position them as irresponsible parents, they didn't openly contest professional advice, but they decided to play along or comply with it. So this strategy was also prompted by parents' feeling of being a marginal migrant position from which it was impossible to challenge the dominant discourse, or also by their fears of being reported to child protection services. But they also recognize the benefits of Norwegian ideals of family leisure and outdoor play. Um, However, even in the cases when they decided to embrace these ideals, they still show criticism. They were critical of the high demands that this approach to family leisure puts on them, in contrast to those ideas from their countries of origin. Yeah. So that's like the main conclusion would be that migrant parents experience professional construction of risk management as implying a form of individual responsibility, and that this typically recognize risk to children well-being linked with migrant parents' lifestyle choices. That's it. Yeah, I spoke too much. Sorry.
Yeah, a little, but it's okay.
A little.
Thank you so much, Raquel, for the very, very interesting topic. I
Should I
didn't know
stop?
myself, yeah, a lot about it. So thank you so much for, yeah, introducing at least
Welcome.
me to this kind of subject. Sorry earlier about the misunderstanding that I said. It looks like you're not filmed if your microphone is already off. So thank you, Anya, for correcting me regarding that. So you actually may now ask your questions by using that chat function at the window, but you also may actually ask, yeah, turn just your microphone on and ask the question. But before that, raise your hand so that we make sure that so that we know that you actually would like to ask your question by making sort of an audio intervention. So yeah, yeah. So I think Mariana would like to ask a question. Yeah, so turn on your, yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much, Rachel, for this very interesting and thought-provoking presentation. And I like the way how you use your research and material to also take up something that in Norwegian society often is taken for granted. Like outdoor play is something that is good, and also to explore how your interlocutors in your research experience it. And of course, it does raise the question of that would have been interesting is also to compare how would Norwegian, how would also a family with a non-migrant background in Norway also experience this pressure of outdoor play and to make a comparison, because as you also started in the beginning to sort of elaborate how intensive parenting also was associated with middle class values and also are also financially expensive, and outdoor play can both be expensive and not, depending on how it is. But I was also wondering, because you also presented that your interlocutors had different background. And I'm wondering, when you sort of put up the different approaches they had to these expectations, did you see any variation relating to your interlocutor's background in that regard?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So actually, something that was common that really came very strong across the data material was the surprise that in Norway they have encountered a greater focus on nature, right? But of course, like parents who came from the countryside, in Spain or in Italy, they would embrace those ideal like more easily, because I guess that they would had a different approach or a different relationship with nature before they migrated. And of course, middle class parents, they also would be more open to embrace or to see the benefits of this approach, and all the benefits of this approach regarding their children well-being, right? So regarding outdoor play and kindergarten practices, I can see that I see some nuances. So and class plays a great role here. So middle class parents, they were more positive, like and they even were grateful to be in a country that that promotes this, because it's what they understand as good childhood and good parenting. But regarding family leisure, um, the topic of the moderate adult alcohol consumption in front of children, um, I didn't see any difference. So parents with middle class background or with working class background, for all of them, it came as a shock that in Norway, family leisure, like parents need to be aware of the activities or the time they spend as a family, and also like how adult alcohol consumption in front of children is perceived. Yeah, so that was, yeah, and it was very interesting to see that even the parents who, like middle class parents who, as I said before, they felt grateful for being in Norway because of its family friendly welfare state, and also like the model of family and parenting that it promotes, because they are also um, like they have already bought the ideal of intensive parenting, so they feel that, oh, like my ideal is supported here. But even those parents, they felt that this ideal of family leisure is very demanding. Yeah. So like, and regarding this, so when I was at Kent University, like in this research group, one of the members is Frank Furedi, who is a sociologist. And then so I've been reading a lot of his work, and there was something that I thought, wow, this is very relevant, because what he was saying is that, okay, like even though, for instance, like the Scandinavian welfare state, right, like very family-friendly welfare state where parents, they are allowed to have more free time to spend with their children, right? Their working lives are more flexible, so they can take care of their children. So even though that idea is like very attractive for my informants coming from Southern European countries, when they are here and when they experience that ideal, the ideal of intensive parenting, they realize that it's very demanding too, right? So yeah, you have more time, as they were saying in that extract from the focus group discussion. You come home earlier, yeah, you have more free time to spend with your family, so that's great. But family leisure is not leisure anymore. It's like it should be organized around the child. So it's like a burden. It's like a work, it's like a job. So and Frank already discussed that, like how, yeah, like family friendly conditions doesn't mean um, less work, yeah, sometimes. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your answer, Raquel. Yeah, for those who are still interested in asking a question, please write it in the chat, or actually raise your hand to ask it in audio. But until we get some questions, meanwhile, I have a question myself, Raquel. So, like you said, we see this sort of clash between two different parenting styles, right? The one which is pretty much direct, entails a lot of involvement in the life's child, and the other one which is pretty indirect, where you just sort of pass down like traditions or whatever by making the child just see it or witness it or whatever, if I understood you correctly. And it looks like many parents, yes, of course, they are openly not, I don't know if I might call it openly, but they at least contest that. They contest this sort of dominant or imposed sort of understandings of how to do parenting and so on and so forth in Norway. So I'm wondering to what extent to what extent do your informants perceive of themselves as capable of contesting these? Because a lot of examples as well show, like from those that you discussed, show that they negotiate it in a certain way. So they make sure that they are not too critical. They make sure that they are not too upfront about their concerns or the fact that they don't like certain things done in the kindergarten, for example. So to what extent they perceive of themselves as actually capable of doing these things? Because it looks like they follow a certain script as well. And yeah, I think this is a question for now.
Yeah, thank you. So to what extent do they perceive they are capable of contesting this? So I think that they perceive that they can contest those dominant views on childhood and parenting if they can justify their practices and not being positioned as irresponsible. For instance, with the diet, like diet was a very discussed topic during the focus group discussion because coming from Southern Europe, these parents, they were surprised by the dietary practices at kindergarten because we have a warm lunch. Yeah. So regarding this practice, for instance, they felt that they were capable of contesting this because they can justify why they think that their diet is better without being positioned as a bad parent. On the contrary, they thought that the reasons they give to their decision would position them as caring parents, right? And also, like regarding outdoor play, so an outdoor snap, as we saw that quote, they would feel that they could contest that practice because they wouldn't be. So because professionals would listen to them because they are afraid of their children getting sick or getting injured. So then it's like professional wouldn't position them as a risk to their children. They would position them maybe as overprotective parents. But yeah, so when my informants perceive that, okay, they can think that I am an overprotective parent, so then that was okay. Like they would try to contest that, or they would try to meet in the middle. But with practices like, for instance, including children in evening activities with other adults, especially if alcohol is present, that kind of practices for them, it was like non-negotiable. Like even, as I said, like even parents, middle class, from with a middle class background, or parents who were like who bought other ideals like dominant in Norway, they would consider that this is a non-negotiable practice and I cannot contest this openly because I would be positioned not as an overprotective parent, but on the contrary, I would be positioned as even as a neglectful parent, especially like that fear of child protection that of course has been reinforced by the last year discourses about the meeting between vulnerable and migrant parents. So that fear of child protection was like always very present. Therefore, they just conclude that it doesn't worth trying. We just play along with it, like we just say that, yeah, of course we don't, no, like, yeah, the children stay at home or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, so it would be like depending on the topic and depending on how they would perceive professional would position them. Yeah. And then, but then of course it's like, okay, like even though they felt they could contest, for instance, outdoor play, they felt they could contest, and they would contest that practice openly, and they would try to reach a compromise. At some point, there were some parents who were like, okay, but what's the point? Like, I can contest this, but at the end of the day, things are how they are here, right? And I'm already here. So then sometimes just adjust it because they felt that there was not other alternative left. Yeah, for them. Yeah. We see there is a question. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm joining from northern Sweden, actually.
Oh.
From Umeå. I'm not very well, I don't really know that much about your topic, but I just have a kind of like a question slash comment. In your PhD project, more of a broader comment, are you thinking of using kind of like the different welfare states typologies, like social democratic and conservative, as a type of analytical tool in order to see how this translates into different like parenting styles? So we know like in social democracies, it's more of a universalistic type of parenting policies. And of course, like in Spain, Italy, Greece, it's more of like family values. And I think this is also some of the, on your slides, I thought that was very interesting how, I think it was a Norwegian woman who talked about the collective, how we think of like, we do everything as a collective, like we think of each other. But then I think it was, oh yeah, and then she said like, in Greece, it's like a dog eat dog world. But then an Italian person said that we are a family, we are also a collective. And they're always, the children are always with us.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just thought that was interesting, of like how they view the collective.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if I really had a question there.
Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you. You know, I didn't think of, I'm not a sociologist, so
yeah, I am
that, but thank you for that, because of course, like, I think that welfare state plays a role here, right? Because I'm looking at how they also understand the role of the state in family life, right? So thank you. Yeah.
Do you have any comment on that, Raquel?
No, actually, so I didn't think of the welfare state technologies. Of course, one of the reasons why I approached parents from these countries, as I presented earlier, was because they have some commonalities regarding how the welfare state is organized, right? And for sure, this shapes how they understand the role of family, of the state in family life. But thank you, because now I will look closely. Yeah, I will look at this.
Yeah, so it appears we don't have any other questions, but one last question slash remark as well, I don't know. I know that you focus only on Southern parents, like coming from Southern Europe, but like, do they perceive themselves as in a better position than parents coming from other backgrounds?
Yeah, from other countries, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what is really interesting about that is that they really perceive them as belonging to the same group. Like, they refer a lot, even in the interviews, because in the focus group, I mixed them up, right? But even in the interviews, they were like, yeah, because, you know, like people from Spain or people from Italy, like they perceive themselves as Mediterranean. So having like a common understanding, but they refer to being lucky because of how Norwegians perceive them. For instance, like Spaniards, they in the interviews they refer so many times of how the image of Spaniards as exotic, like as you know, like joyful and happy, but at the same time hardworking. And also, and they really express like awareness of being seen in a positive way, and they draw contrast with, especially with migrants coming from Eastern Europe. Yeah. So these images of migrants coming from Eastern Europe who can be a burden to the welfare state here, or who don't really want to integrate, but they saw themselves not in opposition to this migrant, but they perceived that Norwegians saw them in opposition to Eastern European migrants. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, regarding parents, so not only regarding regarding their working life in Norway and regarding whether they take up welfare state benefits, but also regarding parenting. Like in my second paper that just got published yesterday, there is a quote from a parent who said, like, you know, like, I can understand fear of child protection services here, but I'm fine. I know that because of course he was middle class dad who, you know, who he was so supportive of intensive parenting. But and he said, and that idea came up a lot, like I can understand that Polish or Romanians, they are so afraid because they have a different parenting style that is more authoritarian, that is more, they use more discipline. So, you know, like they also draw a contrast between themselves and those parents regarding parenting. Yeah.
Yeah, so the point is that after all, we see those kind of differences as reconcilable somehow, like
Yeah,
between the Norwegian
do.
parenting and their parenting.
Yeah,
And not like other immigrants might be more difficult to
difficult.
overcome.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll end it here. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you.
It was very interesting.